It's at 0%. That's what you're supposed to do for the hard reset, is have it be to 0 and get it to charge to 100. But with my F6 error, I can't even get it to charge. And if I take this out, there's not enough power to run the display. So I might have to just leave it unplugged like this for a while and try plugging it in later. But right now, when I plug it in, I hear a click. It shows a charge. Then I hear the second click, and it goes into this state, F6. So I don't know how to do the hard reset if it requires a 0 to 100 charge and I can't charge it. Alright, today we're looking at this Jackery F6 error. Phase 1, Jackery F6 error. So let's press this display button. Nothing's happening. The display button doesn't work. So this is the first way that I noticed there was a problem. I always just press display to see how much power there is, and for some reason it's not working. There's a recommended reset process. Hold display and USB for 13 seconds. You just hold these two buttons at the same time for 13 seconds. Let's try it. What we're holding exactly here is the USB button on the left and the display button on the right. It's been about 13 seconds now. When I take my hands off here, nothing happens. This soft reset function does not result in any change in behavior. So I looked over kind of absolutely everything, and I've come to the conclusion that there's a couple of things going wrong here. You know, none of that stuff works. The thing in the middle doesn't work. The ports in the back don't work. There are several simultaneous malfunctions. A, no display unless plugged in. So you've seen how the display doesn't come on. But it will come on if you plug it in. The first most obvious issue, issue A, is this F6 error that occurs. When it's first plugged in, it does display that it's on AC power. And when I plug it in, the display comes on. And it comes along with a kind of click, click. Listen for the click. And there's a flash. That's click number 1. Looks like it's charging. There it is. It says it's getting 58 watts of input, but then it suddenly turns off. It stops charging, and click number 2 happens. The second click and the second flash. I'm not sure what's going on in there, but it can't be good. Once that's happened, the F6 error appears. Do you see it there? F6. Now that it's plugged in over here, I can press this button, and it does bring the display up. The display comes up with the F6 error though. It never clicks again, only on the first time you plug it in. So that's issue A. Let's look at issue B. It won't charge, even though it's plugged in right here. B, unable to receive a charge. That takes us to issue B. Even though it's plugged in here, it's clearly not charging. And we can look right back here, and you can see there's 3 arrows back here. One for the AC power, which is currently plugged in, and there's actually 2 inputs for the solar panels, which is a DC input. So that's why I have 3 arrows back here to indicate that out of all 3 of those, none of them will help the battery take a charge. Let's look at the next issue. So the next issue is, we've got all these various things that should be outputting power. C, does not output power. We've got some AC plugs. We've got this DC port. We've got a light up here that should work, and a bunch of USBs, 4 of them. None of that stuff works. That's issue C. The soft reset function does not result in any change in behavior, even when performed while receiving power. But now that the display is working while it's plugged into AC power, why don't we try resetting it again? Hold both of these. And just wait for the 13 seconds here. And you can see it did do some kind of a reset, but the F6 came back. So it looks like the soft reset doesn't work in this case. When power is removed, the display button doesn't respond. It only functions when connected to a power source. So the next thing to do is to unplug it and watch what happens here. Once it's unplugged, the display button doesn't work anymore. No good. Okay, so we'll unplug this one more time. The display will go off. Let's use this DC connection for the car. Let's just make sure that if we test the DC input, do we get the same results, different results? I just want to be thorough. So far we've been looking at AC. Let's check DC. Meet you in the garage. Alright, here we are in the garage. And I want to show you what we're going to be doing here. Okay, so look, I've got this thing spun around. We were using this input on the right for AC, but there's actually 2 other inputs over here. There's the AC, and over here, these 2, 1, 2, these are the DC inputs, and it uses this cable. And so I'm going to refer to this one as the outboard because it's closer to the outside, and this one to the inboard because it's closer to the inside. When plugged into the outboard DC port, it shows 2 watts and won't charge. So I'm plugged in here to the DC port in my car. And let's see, it's not going to take a charge when I plug this in. But there's 2 spots, so we'll use the red arrow first, which is the outboard. Now that that's plugged in, we get some pretty strange things. It starts saying 4 watts. It never shows that it's actually plugged in. Battery flashes a little bit, 3 watts. It'll usually settle down to displaying 2 watts there on the input. 2 or 3 watts. And this is how it stays. There's no charge coming through here. And if we follow that red wire down, I don't know what the difference is between that outboard and the inboard DC inputs. I mean, I understand that there's 2 of them because you can plug 2 solar panels in, but when it comes to this type of charging, I admittedly don't know. I'm just documenting the behavior. The display goes off if unplugged. The display shows 2 or 3 watts only, and as soon as I pull the plug on it here, that display goes back off, and just like before, the display button does absolutely nothing. When plugged into the inboard DC port, it shows 7 watts and charging, but does not actually take a charge. Let's move this to the inboard DC port on this side. Now that's plugged in on there, and we're going to see there's still not going to be any charging. Of course, it needs to be plugged in. So let's watch what happens as soon as we plug it in. We're going to get some strange behavior down here. So there it was plugged in. You can see it thinks it's plugged into a wall outlet. Now it's corrected itself. Now it thinks it's in the DC. And it says it's charging. It hangs at 6 or 7 watts. And it'll do that charge animation indefinitely. But it never takes any charge. Phase 2. Output device validation. iPhone 15 Pro draws 20 watts when charging. Surface Pro 7 Draws 65 watts when charging. Okay, here's the two devices we want to test. The bigger one is the laptop, which draws 65 watts. And we also want to test this iPhone, which draws 20 watts. I've got the equipment that it came with. So this is the laptop charger. Over here I have some USB cables that I always use to charge it. And those are just going to be plugged in here to the wall. So we're going to use that AC power test. Phone test on AC power through USB-A power through USB-C power. So for the phone test, we're going to find out it doesn't work under AC power outlets or any of the USB outlets. But first, just to verify that it does work and show you that I always use these, I'm going to plug in from the wall there. We can see it went into a charging state right away. That's with the USB-A charger. Now this is a USB-C charger. With USB-C, the phone starts charging right away. So the reason I'm showing you that is just so that you can tell that these cables work, and we can't blame either of these cables when we try to test the device here. So let's go ahead and plug it in. The first thing we're testing is the AC power. We'll try it with my USB-A cable. No result. Okay, so there is some charge in here, but we can see that there's no result on the USB-A cable. No output wattage. Let's do the USB-C cable. Also no result. Mind you, both of these are going to that DC charging block. So now let's try the A and the C going natively into the charger. Okay, now these cables are plugged directly in. They're no longer going through the AC port. Now they're just USB-A and USB-C straight out of the unit. So I'll plug the first one in. No charging result. Plug the second one in. No charging result. So that tells us that the USB output is not working and the AC output also not working. Laptop test on AC power. Now for the laptop test. We can only use AC power with this charger here. So just like before, we're going to start with the power from the AC in the house. And when I plug this in here, we'll see that this light comes on and the charging indicator shows up here. So we know that when we charge from the wall, this laptop works, this cable works, it will take a charge. That's great. When I unplug it, the light goes off and the UI updates to show it's no longer being charged. So we're going to look for this same response, the light coming on and the charge indicator. But now, instead of using the wall, I've unplugged it. It's no longer getting power. Now, let's plug it in here. As you can see, it's still on. When this is plugged in, the light's not coming on, and the interface is not updating. So that tells us that these ports here are not outputting power. There's 3 of them, and none of them work. No light, no user interface indicator. So that's our test that shows we're not able to charge devices. DC test. AC output, USB-A output, USB-C output. Okay, well, you're about to find out that none of this output works. Here we are on that 7-watt input, DC power coming straight out of the car. So let's test the AC out and the USB out. We'll start with AC to the laptop. It's this connector here. If you remember last time, as soon as it snaps in, the light should go on. We do not get a light, and we're not getting the interface update. So, AC power, not working. Let's move on to the USB A and C. They're both coming out, A and C. And we'll just take this phone here and plug it in. No battery state. Let's try the other one. No battery state. Now if we want to be super thorough, and we do, we're going to plug these into the AC. Now we're going to test USB A with the phone. No charge state. USB C with the phone. No charge state. There is no power even when we're connected here. And it looks like it's charging on this DC power. We've got the DC icon there. You know what's funny? My glasses need charged. My HoloLens. Nothing is being charged. Okay, so the final outcome is no matter if it's plugged in to USB on the left or plugged into AC power on the right, we can see the icon here is DC input at 7 watts. It's suggestive of charging, but that doesn't seem to be the case, unfortunately. So that's a pretty comprehensive set of tests on these devices, both under AC and DC power. None of it works. So I have one last resort. The hard reset procedure requires a total drain to 0% battery, followed by a total charge to 100%. So I've been waiting a long time to try this hard reset, and you can see we need to get the battery to 0. Completely drained like in this hologram. The hard reset process is as follows. Take the battery all the way to 0%. After it's completely drained, charge it all the way to 100%. I've had a real hard time doing this test because, as you've seen, I'm unable to do any power output when I have the F6 error. So the only way I've got this down to 2% is to just leave it plugged in like this, and it's, kind of surprisingly drains that. When I get it to 0%, I might be able to do this full hard reset. If only it would output. If it outputs, I could get to 0, but I can't because it won't output. And I don't know if I can get it to 100 either because it won't charge. I'm really stuck. Without any power output, the only option is to wait for the battery to lose its charge slowly over time. So I'm going to let it drain all the way to 0, and then I'll try to charge it back to 100, and we'll go from there. It's the last thing I can do. Look, we're getting really close. It's at 1%. It's not charging, as you can see. So I just have to wait for it to get to 0. Well, I'm almost to 0%. Here it is at 1. And what I'm going to do is, if you'll remember, when I unplug this, this goes off, and I can't get it to go back on. That's the whole point of this video, really. But when I first put this on, it tries some stuff. Look, 59 watts in charging. Oh, but then it drops. That light goes off, and it stops. That's when the F6 comes up. So what I'm going to try to do this same process again, unplug it and plug it back in when it's at 0. I'm hoping I can get it to 0. So if I wait just a little bit longer, we'll probably be at 0. This is pretty awesome. It's at 0%. So let's try the reset. I don't think you're supposed to do it this way, but let's try it this way anyways. It still shows the F6 error. But the good news is I'm in touch with support about the warranty. Success. 5-year warranty claim initiated. Okay, so I've got my 5-year warranty claim initiated. But is it gonna work? We don't know. I hope so. It would be great to get this thing working again and not have to get a new one. It's awesome that there's such a great warranty with Jackery, but I love this little unit. It's gone on a lot of adventures with me. So as a last resort, I've started talking about that warranty. So far, the warranty process has been really easy. I contacted support. They've been very responsive, gave some serial numbers, and we're just waiting on next steps after filming this little video.